Welcome to Office 2016 video number 7. In this video, we want to see how to create a resume and briefly look at word tables. Now, resumes. What is a resume? Well, the goal of a resume is to convince an employer to hire you. So a resume highlights a person's education, work experience, and skills. Now, resumes are usually scanned quickly, maybe 20 seconds they look at each one. If they're interested and you can catch their attention, then they maybe take a deeper look. Now, there is no one set of rules for resume, and I'm certainly not a resume expert. I may be able to show you some cool tricks in Word. But a couple common sense keys. You should read the job description and tailor your resume to meet the requirements of the job. That means you have your standard resume, right? You read the job description and maybe you change a couple parts of it, or maybe the objective. Make it your own. Include sections that highlight your individual experience. Put the most relevant and recent information first. Be honest, but don't undersell yourself. Keep it on one page. It's very rare when you want a resume longer than one page. Formatting absolutely should be consistent throughout. Sections possible. The objective, what your skills are, experience, education, leadership, community work, awards. Now, maybe you have community work and not awards, or maybe you have awards and not community work. So you have to decide which ones best fit you and the job you're applying for. Here's a great website with some hints. Now, word tables, I'm actually just going to take a brief look because for resumes, there are some useful templates. But we got to make sure that when we download a template, we know what that icon means in a word table and what that non-printing character means. All right, I'm going to close this Alt F4. I've already put in my jump drive, navigated to our Word folder. Now, I want to go down and use the icon on my taskbar, click the blue W. And guess what? We're going to look at these things that I told you were probably not very good. Now, actually, we are going to create our own from scratch because you really do have complete power. But if I come up here and type resume and enter, I've even maybe 20 years ago used some of these resumes. Now, you can click on them, and it will give you a little preview. Notice objective, experience, education, communication, leadership, references, chronological resume. You could click create. And in fact, let's do it. If you like this one or one of the other ones, let's go ahead and click create. Now, first off, how did it know my name? That is amazing. Let me show you. That comes from our settings up in File, Options. And under General, there's the user's name for this computer. That's where that name came from. You can change that if you want. You don't want your name there. You want something different. You can change that. Now, there's our template. We are allowed to simply click, like, for example, in street address, job title, company name, whatever element in this template for a resume, and click and start typing. Now, we're not going to use this template to create our resume. We're going to create our resume from scratch. But because so many templates use invisible tables, and these tables are sometimes hard to navigate, I wanted to download this and show you that actually this was constructed with a word table. Now, you can tell that there's a table. This icon in the upper left-hand corner is the table icon that allows us to select the entire table. We also know that this is a table because tables are made up of columns and rows. And the intersection is a cell, and that is a non-printing character that means a cell. Now, I still remember when I downloaded my first resume template and tried to use it. It was difficult because the table object, if you start moving your cursor around, there's a cursor that means you can change the column width. That means you can insert a column. So there's this weird invisible table here. So one way to visualize it when you're first starting to work with word tables is click to select the entire table and you can add borders, at least temporarily, just to see what actually is there. I'm going to click the Borders button. And sure enough, we can see there's a cell, there's a cell. Now, that's a non-printing character for a cell. There's another one. This means the end of the row. Now, if you're working with tables, we can select a particular cell, and if I hit the Tab key, it goes to the next column, which is the next cell in this row. If I hit Tab, it goes to the next row, Tab, Tab. So you can cycle through the cells in a particular row, and then Tab to go down to the next row. Now, again, we're not going to use this, but if you want to use it, there it is. The template is pretty easy to use, and if you know it's a table, it makes it a lot easier to use. If you decided to turn on the borders, then, of course, at the end, you'd come and select No Borders. Now, we want to close this either using the X or Alt F4. Now, it's going to ask us, do we want to save? I'm going to click Don't Save. Now, we need to go to a browser, so I'm going to open up a browser. We need to go to our class website, and there's Project 7. There is our start file for creating a resume. I'm going to right-click, Save Link As. We're going to save it to our Word folder inside of Video Files. That's where we want to save it. This name is fine. The extension is fine. I'm going to click Save. Now, I'm going to use Alt-Tab to jump back to Windows Explorer. I see my start file. I'm going to double-click, or if it's selected, I hit Enter to open it. Now, I've already typed out all of the text, and we're going to see how to format this. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to create a resume for Abdi. Now, there's the name and the address and email. That will be our letterhead. Then we're going to have certain sections: objective, skills, work experience, education, and awards and certificates. Now, we'll format all of this. And first off, we could create a resume that's listed linearly. And that actually would be fine, top to bottom. But since the employer maybe looks at it for 20 seconds right off the bat, I'm going to emphasize the objective and skills off to the left in its own column or section. And then the rest of the sections I'm going to put on the right with more detail. Now, notice that means we have to have two columns here. But first, let's go ahead and add some formatting up here and add paragraph level border. Now, I'm going to highlight both the name and the address using the selection bar. I'm going to change the font size up here or use Control close square bracket. I'm going to try and stop at 20. Now I'm going to use Control B to add bold. I can come up and add center, either up there on the ribbon, or Control E. Now I actually want this address to be smaller than the name. So now I'm going to use Control open square bracket. Now I'm watching up in the font group until I see 14. Now I'm actually going to leave that 20. We will add the same formatting down here, but we'll say leave this 16. Now let's add a bottom border, just like we did last video, up to paragraph. And instead of using the bottom border default, I'm going to come down to Borders and Shading. Click on that. Now I want to make sure it says None. Then I get to pick the style, the color, and the width. I'm going to keep it simple and just choose default color and 2 1/4 point. Now I've selected that, I can come over and draw. This is my preview. I click where the bottom border goes. If I accidentally click off to the side, I simply click it again to remove it. Now I have my bottom border. We'll use that same size other places in our resume. Click OK. Now I want you to notice something. There is the default space between each paragraph, and we talked about this in the last video. Now, I already added some paragraph level formatting up here, and this has the default left alignment and stuff. But watch this. I can change the spacing after the paragraph and the line spacing, which still has the same default for all paragraph marks in this document. I'm going to use Control A to select everything, and then somewhere I'm going to right-click and point to Paragraph. Now, when you select a bunch of paragraphs that have different paragraph level formatting, some of the text boxes will be blank, and some of them will have some numbers or information in them. This one's blank because it doesn't know what to show. It has center alignment up here and left alignment down here. But that's perfect. I want to leave it exactly the way I set it up. And what I want to change is down here. And these text boxes already have settings because the paragraphs all had the same settings. I want to add 0 spacing after each paragraph. And then I'm going to change line spacing to single. Now when I click OK, all the paragraphs have that new spacing after and line spacing. Now I'm going to click in the second hard return, and I want to have 2 columns. Now instead of using a table like we saw in that resume template, I like to use columns. So if I go up to Page Layout, oh, look at that. In the Page Setup, there's columns. Now wait a second. As we mentioned in an earlier video, page setup like margins, that's a section level formatting or a document level formatting. That means if I add columns, it'll do it to the entire document. Now let's just make that mistake and see what happens. I'm going to click the drop down and select 2 columns. Well, of course, it did it for the whole document. I really want my letterhead to be at the top without columns, and then the rest of it to have columns. I'm going to use Control Z. Now we're totally allowed to have one part of the page or document without columns and another part of this page or another part of the document with columns. We just have to set a section break. Now when we set a section break, that means we can change whatever page setup or section level formatting we want in the first section and the second section. All right, you ready? I'm going to click in the second paragraph mark. And in Layout, there's the Breaks button. Now we saw how to use Page Break. Remember, that was Control Enter for a keyboard. And down here is Section Breaks. Now we're going to use Continuous because we want 2 different page setups or section level formatting on the same page. Sometimes you use Next Page because, for example, you want one page landscape for a big picture and the other pages should be portrait. That's when you might use section break on the next page. But let's click Continuous. Sure enough, look at that. There's a big non-printing character. Now, I could change the margins up here, and it would totally be different than down here. But what do we want? We want to put our cursor in the second section and come up and try the column drop-down. 2 columns. And just like that, I have my 2 columns. Up here, no columns at all. Now, we want objective and skills, work experience right there. That needs to jump to the next column. Now, we know how to put our cursor before a particular paragraph and use Control-Enter to create a page break. But we want a column break. We can go up to Layout, drop down for breaks. And there it is, column break. Now, this one is not a common thing to do. There is a keyboard. It's not even in the notes because I don't even use it that often. You can either click this, or with your cursor, you can use Control-Shift-Enter. Now, I actually learned about Control-Shift-Enter to create a column break because I did it once by accident when I was doing a page break. But now we have objective and skills in our first column, work experience, education, and awards down in our second column. Now, the next thing we want to do is change the actual width of column 1 and column 2. Now, we can come up and look at the ruler. Here's column 1. Here's column 2. And directly in between, in the gray area, we can double-click to open up our columns dialog box. Now, we want to change the width for each column. Let's uncheck equal column widths because we don't want equal column widths. I'm going to try to change width of the first column to 2 tab. Let's see how that looks. We can see a preview over here. Let's click OK. I don't think I want, we're going to have some formatting in a bulleted list. I don't think I want that so crowded, so let's come up and double click. Increase the width. We can always come back and change this later, but we'll try clicking OK. Now I want to add the same formatting to each area of our resume. We will start with the objective area. I clicked in the selection bar to select the characters and the hard return. Now I'm going to add bold, Control B, and then font up in the home ribbon right there, or Control close square bracket. I'm watching. I'm going to stop at 16. Now I want to add the same type of border we had up here. So with the paragraph selected, I can come up, drop down to borders and shading. None. Come down. Oh, look, it's already selected. Now I'm going to click at the bottom, click OK. Now I'm going to use that same formatting on the different areas. So with the whole paragraph selected, right-click to open up the mini toolbar, and I'm going to try to double-click the Format Painter so I can load my cursor up with just the formatting and then paste it in other areas. Double-click. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, ready? I'm going to, over in the margin, click on Skills. In the margin, click on Work Experience. Down to Education. You can either click over here or take your cursor and click and drag. And then down to Award Ceremony. Either click in the selection area or with your I-beam, click all the way to the end. Now notice my cursor is still loaded up with the Format Painter, so I'm going to click the Escape key to turn it off. All right, so for the objective, we're going to leave it as a sentence there. But for each hard return, I want bullets. So I'm going to highlight using the selection bar all the paragraphs. Now come up to the paragraph group and click the bullets button. Again, I'm going to keep it simple with the little dots. If you want to get fancy, you can choose something different. Generally, with a resume, we want to keep it simple and elegant and consistent. I'm going to click Escape. Now, I'd like to move these bullets all the way lined up with the edge of the border. I'm going to actually use the ruler. If we hover our cursor, that's the first line, indent, hanging, and left. When I see left, I'm going to click, and it will move all three elements. I'm going to move it so it's pointing right there. Now, I'd like to apply the same paragraph formatting down in Education and Awards and Certificates, because these are bulleted lists also. Right-click, and I'm going to try again. Double-click. Now I'm going to use the selection bar, and I'm clicking and holding and dragging. When I let go of the click, just like that, the formatting is applied. Now let's come down to the Awards section. Click, drag, and when I let go of the click, the formatting is applied. Now I'm going to click Escape. Now in this area, we have our job, location, and time for each one of our jobs. And then underneath, we have some skills or tasks from that particular job. So I'm going to highlight either with my I-beam cursor or over in the selection bar the first two lines in that paragraph. Control B. Now, I'd like to add some space before and after. So I'm going to right-click Paragraph and maybe try before 6, after 6. Click OK. That's looking OK. Right-click, Format Painter, double-click. Now, I want to get character and paragraph level formatting, so I'm going to highlight everything using the selection bar, clicking, holding, and now I'm going to let go. And then I'm going to do the same thing for Bookkeeper. Click, hold to click, drag, let go. Now I'm going to click Escape to turn that Format Painter off. Now I want to add some bullets, so I'm going to highlight. I could have equally clicked at the top and used the Shift key to arrow down to highlight each line. Now we come up, and I'm going to click the border and leave the indent. Now I could copy the formatting, I can also highlight these three hard returns. I'm holding Control, and now I'm in the selection bar, going to select these three hard returns using the Control key. Now I come up and click Bullets. Now I'm going to use Control and Roll. Now I'd really like to fill up the entire page down to the bottom. And you may have enough elements in your resume to fill it up. But I'd like to add some space to push the text down to the bottom of the page. And I don't want the bullets to be so crowded. So I'm going to highlight these bullets here, right-click, Paragraph. And I'm going to try just a little bit. I'm going to try after the 0, backspace 3. And watch what happens when I hit Enter. Nothing happens. It looks like there was something at the end. Right-click, Paragraph. Now I'm going to uncheck. Don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. It wasn't adding the space because they had the same bullet style. Now when I click OK, there we go. Now I'm going to apply this. Right-click, double-click the Format Painter. And I'm going to, over here, click and drag. Now this is kind of dangerous what I just did. I'm going to Control and Roll. Because when you're that small, it's too easy to click up there and ruin that. All right, ready? Now Escape. And I think I'll use the Control selection trick up here. Either click with my I-beam, or use the selection bar. I'm holding Control. Now I'm going to right-click, Paragraph, uncheck, and change this to 3. Again, I'm trying to just get a little bit more space between the bullets and extend the resume down to the bottom. Click OK. Now when I Control and Roll, that is looking pretty good. Control-Shift-8, click at the end. You definitely want to print this out, look at it, see if it looks good. There we go. You know, it doesn't look good right there. That line should be lined up here. Let's turn our non-printing characters back on. Control-Shift-8. There's a hard return right there, but not over here. I'm going to click right before Work Experience and Enter. That fixes our problem, but creates a new problem by putting one of the bullets on the next page. No problem. Let's use Control-Z and get rid of this hard return. Now I'm going to Control-Shift-8, and that's looking pretty good. If that's not enough breathing room, right, we could still have the hard return, and maybe we change the top margins to 0.8 or something instead of an inch to try and get that bullet back on the page. But that will do it. Now I'm going to hit F12. Click right before the S. Hold my Shift and arrow, arrow, arrow. And now I'm going to type Finished and Enter. Now, by all means, if you don't like this, you like to see it listed vertically, we could totally change it. Simply click in this section, come up to Layout, and remove the columns by saying 1. Now I need to turn my non-printing characters back on, Control-Shift-8, and there's a column break. Let me put my cursor before the column break, delete. And now we almost got it fitting on one page. We're going to do the margins. Now, we don't need this section break. Actually, before we do anything, I want to keep that one with the 2 columns, so I'm going to hit F12 and call this one Finished with no columns, and Enter. Now we can put our cursor right before the section break and delete. Now, because we have a single section, we can do our section level formatting for our margins and not have to do it in 2 sections. Now we go up to Layout. That dialog launcher or the keyboard, Alt-PSP. All right, top, I'm going to change it. I'm just going to try 0.75. Tab, the bottom, 0.75. Tab, left, 0.75. Tab, 0.75. Tab, and Enter. And there we go. There's our one-page vertical resume, Control-S. All right, that was a lot of fun with resumes. We first saw how to download a template and looked at Word tables and learned how to maneuver in a Word table a little bit. Then we added character level and paragraph level formatting to this resume, including some bulleted lists and some borders. If I open up the two-column resume, Control-Shift-8 to turn those off. This one we also did section level formatting where we set a section break, Control-Shift-8, there it is right there, and then put columns in one section and no columns in another. All right, that was a lot of fun with resumes. Next video, we get to actually do a research paper. Now, most people feel dread when they have to do a research paper. But when you learn all the tricks in Word for creating a research paper, man, all of a sudden research papers are fun again. All right, we'll see you next video.